Every empire believes its crisis is unique. That is the very first symptom. In 1958, 73% of Americans trusted their government. By the end of 2025, that number was 17%. No empire in modern memory has survived that fall, and yet this one might. The only question here is as what? This is not a story about Donald J. Trump or Joe Biden or any single United States of America's president. It is not a video about the right or the left. This is a story about what happens when the most powerful country in history begins quietly to forget what it actually stands for. I want to share with you 9 insights about what is actually happening in the United States of America right now. Now, let me be very clear, these are not predictions, these are just my opinion, and these are patterns that I actually observed. And once I observed, I knew I had to sit down, script this down, and actually make a video on this. Insight 1: Politics has become performance. Folks, today I think all of us can agree that politicians no longer compete to govern, they compete to be seen. The metric of success has quietly changed. It is no longer what you build, it is no longer what you can actually fix, it is how much attention can you hold as an individual politician. The loudest politician in any room is now systematically more visible than the most competent one. Not occasionally, structurally. When visibility becomes power, competence becomes invisible, and a country slowly stops being governed by its best and it starts to be governed by its loudest. Insight 2: Outrage is not a side effect, it is the product. A politician who goes on to say that we need a balanced reform gets less engagement than the one who's actually saying that this particular group is actually destroying our country. That is not a bug, that is how the system was actually built. Folks, it is a matter of the fact that human attention is hardwired to react to threats faster than it actually reacts to opportunities. Every social media platform discovered this and built their businesses on top of it. Between 1978 and 2016, the gap of negative feeling between the Democrats and the Republicans nearly doubled. Researchers call this effective polarization. You and I call it something else altogether. Outrage is not a side effect of the system, outrage is the product. Insight 3: Americans no longer trust anything. Iraq, 2008 crisis, COVID-19, inflation. A generation of Americans lived through repeated institutional failures. Today, 7 in 10 people believe that the government officials, business leaders, and journalists intentionally went on to mislead them. 7 out of 10, that's a big number. Mistrust is no longer a political position, it is actually a default setting, and when emotion has no institution to actually flow through, it finds a movement, personalities, and conspiracies to be actually banking on. Insight 4: Identity has replaced policy. There was a time Americans debated what to do: taxes, trade, healthcare, education, and foreign policy. Debates and topics and interests of the people that actually did matter and when went on to fix would actually make a real impact on every American citizen. Today, they debate who counts as American. That is not a policy debate, that becomes a civilizational debate. Policy can be compromised, identity cannot, because compromise feels like self erasure, and I think that is what is happening to most of the people in the United States of America. At least this is the part that the American politicians are actually using to polarize people. 80% of Americans now say Democrats and Republicans can no longer agree on basic fundamental facts. Folks, I'm not talking about opinion, right? As a political party and different ideology and agenda and a manifesto, there can be a lot of differences of opinion. But when two political parties who are fighting to govern the same country have disbeliefs about the fundamental facts that everybody accepts as mere citizens of the United States of America, Insight 5. America has shattered into 1,000 publics. The internet did not unify Americans into a single public. It amplified every micro community into a political actor. There is no longer an American public. There are publics, thousands of them, each with their own moral values, each convicted that the other group's ideology or the other group's morals are fundamentally insane and goes against the basic principle norm of societal conditioning and America's welfare. In 2025, political moderators reached a record low of 34%. The middle is not disappearing because people stopped being reasonable. It is actually disappearing because the algorithm stopped rewarding reasonableness. Insight 6. The money beneath the noise is now visible. In 2024, federal lobbying reached a record $4.4 billion. The election cycle itself cost about $16 billion. The most expensive election in human history. It was not won by any one particular candidate, it was won by an algorithm, and the algorithm, ladies and gentlemen, did not cast its vote. Now, stop. This is the moment where most political analysts and intellectuals' ideologies and thought process actually falls apart. There are two questions that look identical, and there is also something that will be running in every person's mind right now as I speak and as I make this video. But those two questions are fundamentally very different. The first, who has too much power in this country? The second, which group secretly controls everything? The first question keeps a republic alive. The second question ends one. America is actually forgetting which one is which and how to distinguish them. You can question lobbying systems, campaign finance, donors network, and media incentives. That is structural critique. That actually goes on to keep democracies alive. But the moment you collapse all of that into ethnicity, one religion, one bloodline, you stop doing analysis and you start doing something much older and something fundamentally much darker. Insight 7. We see more, but we know less. We can see more than any generation in history. Lobbying records, donor databases, leaked memorandums, foreign policy cables, international and internal documents and documentations. And somehow, ladies and gentlemen, we know less because awareness without epistemistic tools do not produce fundamental facts that should be favorable and known by every single person in a democracy. It produces paranoia. Transparency without trust, it's not a reform, it is just mere exposure that counts for nothing, not even clarity to a fundamental American citizen. Insight 8. America is removing the systems it was built on. Here is a country whose Fortune 500 companies are 46% founded or led by immigrants, right, or their children. Microsoft, Google, Nvidia, Tesla, Apple. Satya Nadella came on an H1B from India. Sundar Pichai came on an H1B from India. Elon Musk came on an H1B route, right, through South Africa. Jensen Huang, right, he came as a child immigrant from Taiwan. September 2025, a $100,000 fee is imposed on the same visa that bought every single one of them. Jensen Huang said it himself. I don't think my family would have been able to afford it. This is not an immigration debate, and I'm not trying to make it an immigration debate, for God's sake, right? And it should not be that anymore. This is just a country trying to remove a system without asking what replaces the function that it actually served. Politicians keep saying, and they make it a part of their manifesto, they make it a part of their agenda, they make it a part of their political campaigns, saying cut the visa. But almost nobody is fundamentally asking who fills the engineering gap, who builds the next Nvidia, who beats China in the artificial intelligence race, what is the implementation plan. A real grievance, a real dependency, and no one is asking the question a serious country would have to actually answer before implementing strict laws like this that go on to tamper with fundamental policies that have gone on to shape how great that country was. Insight 9. power has quietly moved. Power used to live in Washington, in Brussels, in Wall Street, in oil fields, in factories. Power lives somewhere else now. It lives in the minutes of attention you give your phone every single day. Whosoever controls the feed controls the political reality of 330 million people with no election, no accountability, no democratic mandate. The most important seat of power in America today is not Washington, it is in a server farm. So, 9 insights. Politics has become performance, outrage is the product, trust has collapsed, identity has replaced policy, the public has shattered, the money is now visible. We see more, but we actually know less. We're removing systems without replacing them, and power has quietly moved. In 2026, VDEM Institute, which has measured democracies for over 20 years, recorded the steepest one-year decline in the United States ever measured in any modern democracy. So, is this the collapse? I personally don't think so. Brazil came back, Poland came back, Bolivia came back. 10 countries with similar declines have reversed them within a decade. Empires rarely end, they change form. The America of 2040 will not be the America of the 2000, but neither was the America of the 1965 the America of 1925. Remember where we began. Every empire believes its crisis is unique. That is the first symptom. But here's the second symptom. Every empire also believes that its citizens are powerless to shape what actually comes next, and that part is what I personally have a problem with, because I fundamentally believe that it is not the truth. The machine was actually built by humans, it can be rebuilt by humans, but it starts with asking better questions, not who is the enemy, not what is the plan. America is not ending, it is actually changing form. The only question left is whether anyone is awake enough to shape what it becomes.